Chapter 21 Ashton and Aladdin. Carrie yawned as she walked fully dressed out of her room aboard the Highwind the next morning. They had all been up past 2 a.m. The concert had lasted so long, but she could still recall the lyrics of the last song. Heeding the call, she thought to herself. That's what we're doing. Heeding the call the worlds gave us to be their protectors. That's why we have the Keyblades. She sighed and turned her head as Sora entered from within his room. Sora, she asked, pulling her Keyblade out and giving it a meaningful look, don't you ever wish that the Keyblade had chosen someone else so we could live our lives in peace? Sora turned towards her and gave Carrie a sympathetic look as the Oathkeeper vanished. Sometimes, he replied, sympathetically holding her hands in his. I didn't think so much about it on my first journey. Then the thought that I should just give it all up and run away occurred occasionally the last time. But if we give up and the Keyblades chose others, then they'll have to be the ones to suffer its curse. So we might as well do our duty to the worlds, so others can live in peace without the fate of the universe hanging in the balance on their shoulders. Carrie sighed as Sora began rubbing her shoulder. You're right, Carrie said slowly, but still sending our lives into danger. She pouted. Sora laughed and Carrie looked at him quizzically. What? I'm only in danger around you, Kai. He laughed. You were scary when you confronted Jack aboard the Pearl. Carrie smirked wickedly as she remembered the deed she had done. Would you like a repeat? She asked dangerously, feigned malice dripping off her tongue as she slowly advanced on her retreating Sora. Huh, Keyblade boy? Sora smiled at her in jest and placed his hands in front of him in a defensive stance as he continued to back away. No, he said with a laugh as he shook his head. I'd be much too frightened to insult a princess. Carrie stifled a giggle before leaping forward. Sora yelped and summoned his Keyblade, but Carrie raised her hand, and light shone from her fingertips, momentarily blinding him. She ducked under the black steel of the Oblivion and came up and Sora planting her lips on his. Sora dropped the Oblivion and Carrie smirked as she broke away before he could see straight. But then again, she said wisely, slicking away to the kitchens, if it hadn't been for the Keyblade, it might have taken us longer to get together. Sora was left standing for a moment as Carrie wound past the couch and into the ship's halls. Turning on his heel, Sora opened the blast doors, which had been closed for some reason, and walked up the steps to the bridge, to find Max snoring on one of the chairs. A wicked grin grew on Sora's face as he contemplated getting revenge on Max for waking him yesterday. Sora silently crept up to Max, fingers poised and ready for his plan. With a cry, Sora leapt forward and grabbed some of Max's hair to give him a noogie. Max yelped in pain as Sora ground his hand into his scalp. Wake up, Max, Sora taunted as he released him. Max tiredly slugged Sora's shoulder in a friendly manner and rubbed his eyes. What were you doing sleeping up here with the blast doors closed anyway? Sora asked with an inquisitive look. Max looked up at him. I came up here to look at the stars last night, Max said, looking out into space. I wanted to have a nice, peaceful moment before going to bed, and then... Max laughed expressively. I'm surprised you and Kyrie could sleep through the racket your nobodies were making. Sora gave Max a confused look. What racket? He asked, puzzled. Max nodded. Just what I thought, he said humorously. You remember the song Roxas sang last night? He asked in order to dodge the question. Sora nodded. Yeah, he said, still confused. Remember the second verse? Max prodded. Sora screwed up his face as he tried to remember all the lyrics. He opened his mouth and began to sing a cappella. I want to make love to you tonight. I can't wait till the morning has come. And I know that the time is just right, and straight into my arms you'll run. And when you come, my heart will be waiting, to make sure that you're never alone. There and then all my dreams will come true, dear. There and then I'll make you my own. Any time I touch you, you just tremble inside, and I know just how much you want me that you can't hide. I think that was it, Sora said as he looked at Max. Sora began thinking about the lyrics in the verse when it hit him hard. Max looked on as Sora's face fluctuated between shock and pure rage. They did what? He roared, looking savagely towards the cabin. Max nodded solemnly and turned towards the navigation screen. Yep, he said slowly. He made her his own. I had to close the blast doors just to get some quiet since I couldn't exactly go into my room. Max looked up again at Sora to see him fuming, steam coming from his ears and sweat boiling on his face. Shouldn't you have figured it out? Max asked nervously. I mean, you and Carrie shared thoughts with them. Sora shook his head and his fists clenching and his jaw set. "They can block their thoughts from us," he snarled. "We have no privacy, but they do." Max shifted his eyes anxiously towards Sora's arms, shaking with rage. Max gulped, quickly looking away from the enraged captain. "Which world, Sora?" Sora snapped out of it for a moment and appeared lost. He began, caught off guard by the question. "Agrabah," he said after a moment's thought. "Take us to Agrabah." Max nodded and plunged it into the autopilot before raising from his seat. "Where's Kairi?" he asked, walking past Sora towards the cabin. "She's in the galley," Sora answered as he began following. "Probably having some breakfast." Max nodded approvingly. "Breakfast could be good right now," he said, patting his stomach. "I normally wake up and get a midnight snack, but I couldn't because of—" "Enough!" Sora snapped, quickly brushing past him. "I need to talk to Kairi about this." Max stopped as Sora flew past like a gale. "I guess breakfast will have to wait," he said glumly, and started following along slowly in Sora's wake. When Sora was out of sight, Max quickly ducked into a room where two shadowy figures stood. Sora ran past the painting of Disney Castle, a wind stirred behind him, and the flowers bent towards his figure, already dashing into the kitchen in a rage. Sora looked right to see Kairi in an apron just in front of the stove. "You're just in time, Sora," she said, looking up from the skillet she was standing by. "I was just about to fry up some eggs and—" Sora silenced her with a look and an outstretched hand. "Not now, Kairi," he growled. "But," Kairi said, a mixture of confusion and hurt in her eyes. Sora turned his eyes away from her so he wouldn't feel guilty about it. "Roxas! Nominate!" Sora bellowed. "In here! Now!" The nobodies faded in, yawning and rubbing their eyes. "You called," Roxas said, scratching his side. Flames sprouted from Sora's eyes as he looked at his nobody. "Can it, Roxas?" he snarled. "You and Nominate have a lot of explaining to do." "Can't this wait, Sora?" Nominate asked tiredly, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "We're a little tired to answer your ramblings right now." Sora flashed a scowl at her. "You two probably are tired," he snapped at her, "especially after last night." Kairi made a step forward towards them all. "Sora?" she asked, glancing between each member of the triangle that had formed. "What's going on?" Sora rocked his heels and the balls of his feet. "Pop quiz, Kairi," he said, still glaring intently at Roxas. "What heck causes pregnancy?" Kairi's face brightened as she got the answer. A fell shadow grew upon it. "You two didn't," she growled, standing next to Sora with a scowl on her face. Roxas and Nominate looked at each other for a moment before they turned to Sora and Kairi, smiling sheepishly. "Surprise!" Nominate giggled half-heartedly. Kairi's eyes narrowed down on the girl as Max crept in, attempting to tiptoe past them. Roxas and Nominate's heads instantly snapped towards him, and Max froze. "You told us you wouldn't tell!" Roxas hissed. "I didn't tell," Max refuted. "I let Sora figure it out on his own. Besides, you two robbed me of a better part of my sleep last night with the noises you were making and the image that is now burned forever into my skull. It wasn't our fault, you peak." Nominate's snarled pupils dilated into cat-like slits. "So you really did do it!" Kairi shrieked, revolted at their behavior. She shook her head. "This has to be the most irresponsible thing either of you have done. Even more than that barrel of C4. We're only 15 and we've only been couples for 10 days. And you're already doing that?" "Technically," Roxas began in defense. "It's been 13 days if we count Neverland." Sora stepped forward angrily. "A baker's dozen or 10, he snapped. "You two are moving ahead way too fast." Nominate placed her hands on her hips, and Kairi started to shake her head. "I can't believe this is happening," Kairi moaned. "You couldn't tell that this was going to happen?" Nominate asked. Kairi looked up, her blue eyes set hard as steel as she gazed at Nominate. "Not if you guys keep hiding everything from us," she growled. "Sora and I have all our thoughts laid bare for either of you to look at on a whim, while you two keep nearly everything you think, say, or do, while inside of us a secret. We have no inner privacy," Sora added gruffly, holding a hand on Kairi's shoulder. "It's the two of you that get to keep things hidden." "You could have paid attention to the songs we were singing last night," Nominate said arrogantly. "Can I say something here?" Max asked, raising his hand. His attempt at gaining attention was met by glares on both sides of the rooms. Max smiled weakly and withdrew his hand as the argument continued. "And," Roxas scoffed, his head rising in cocky defiance, "we, at least, weren't the ones who slept in the same bed. That was just a prank you and Sora's dad played on us, Roxas," Kairi snarled. "The first time," Roxas said with a smirk. "Yes, but the second time, you were the one who came to Sora and asked if you could sleep together." If Carrie's face hadn't already been as red as possible from anger, it most certainly would have deepened. Only to get my mind off of the grief after losing Jack. We were all upset about it, she argued, before adding quietly to herself, and because I almost died to the Kraken, I needed Sora to hold me. She shivered at the memory of the clammy tentacle that kept her writhing underwater and subconsciously rubbed her arm. If you say so, Carrie growled, still knowing what Carrie had said. But who's to say we were even the ones who thought up the idea? She argued viciously as Carrie's head snapped back up, or somebody's faces became even more enraged at her comments and turned off of the red towards a touch of purple. We have never thought about that! They yelled in retaliation, the Oathkeeper and Oblivion appearing in their hands. Temper, temper, a voice said behind them. The Keyblade duo whipped around to see a man of about 24 with wavy brown hair, wearing a blue cotton shirt and blue jeans, standing next to a man with a sphere cam. Shock filled up Sora and Carrie as they beheld him, knowing him, and understanding what he was saying before he said it. You two just got punked! The young man roared. Roxas, Naminé, and Max started breaking out in laughter as the Keyblades vanished from Sora and Carrie's hands. Ashton Kutcher had punked them. What? They stammered incoherently. What? Sora looked frantically at Carrie as Ashton came forwards and slapped their shoulders. You honestly didn't think that your nobodies would have sex, did you? He added, a smile adoring his face. Sora and Carrie each blushed as they looked at each other. Sora said, stroking the back of his head, wary of the camera being shoved in their faces. Carrie shrugged and smiled at Sora before they both turned to Ashton. I guess he really fooled us, Carrie said. They then turned their attention to Roxas and Naminé. Sorry for yelling at you guys, they apologized. The nobodies waved it off. You don't need to apologize for a punking coming together, Roxas and Ashton said at the same time. Sora turned away from Roxas and Ashton Kutcher and looked at Ashton Kutcher, a smile growing on his lips, the knowledge that it was all a prank finally sinking in. So, he said, just how did you punk us? Ashton laughed as he revealed in the Keyblade Master's presence on camera. Well, he explained, I met Roxas and Naminé and Max last night during the party in Atlantica. One of my friends was a drummer, so he got me in. While you and Carrie were busy with each other, I had this great idea. Hey, what if the Keyblade Master and his princess girlfriend that their others had been sleeping with each other, and they jumped at the opportunity to prank you guys? Sora gave a bout of mock laughter and turned to look at the others. It seems we're the ones getting pranked these days, Carrie said, leaning against Sora's shoulder and looking at Naminé, a wry smile on her lips. She and Sora looked at each other, and Sora gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. At least they're only pranks, Sora said to her. Ashton suddenly turned them around to find the camera uncomfortably close to their faces. Go on, Kutcher prodded. I'm sure you know what to say. The teens quickly looked at each other again before glancing back at the camera. I'm Sora, said he. And I'm Carrie, said she. And we've just been punked. Ashton started walking away with the cam following him. There you have it, folks, he said. A pair of celebs punked right here on this live broadcast. And I'm sure they took it, and I'm glad they took it so well because, he leaned forward and began whispering, they could probably kill me without even thinking if they wanted to. Sora's face grew stony as he looked at Ashton. Did you just say this was live? He asked menacingly, the Oblivion appearing in his hand. Kutcher looked at the blade with fear. Gotta run, he said to the camera before booking it to the hangar bay. Sora and Carrie, still with her apron hot on his cameraman's heels. Little did the two teens know that many of their friends and a certain enemy of theirs had been watching. They've slept in the same bed? Donald asked aloud, looking up at Goofy in the Vingelot's cabin. Goofy looked down at him and shrugged as King Mickey simply sighed, lost in his own thoughts. Well, Goofy reasoned. Harry did say that she needed Sora to hold her. Wait, Donald quacked. What did she say before that? Goofy placed a finger to his chin. That they needed to get over the grief of losing, he said slowly before his face fell. Jack. They removed their hats, and Donald, sighing in grief, King Mickey shook his head. I knew she should have stayed at the castle, he said. She's already almost died, and Sora has a lot of explaining to do when we see them again. Donald looked at his king in frustration. What? Does he have explaining to do? He spluttered. We've been keeping their home's destruction and their parents' deaths from them. We're the ones who are going to have to explain everything. Your Majesty, "We should just tell him," Goofy said. Things are getting more dangerous. Prince Elaine radioed us that Kosix and Nixian captured Belle last night, and with Captain Sparrow's death, I don't know if we can do anything anymore without stopping Maleficent as soon as possible. Yeah, Donald added. It's much better if we're united than divided. King Mickey sat in silence, lost in contemplation at their console. Donald and Goofy sat silently, sometimes glancing at each other, but always watching their sovereign for a sign. Suddenly the mouse's head popped up, a fire of resolve burning in his black eyes. He abruptly looked at Donald and Goofy, and they snapped to attention. "Normally I'd be angry at the both of you for challenging my decisions," he said. But in this case, you're both right. Going around and stealing keyholes is only a precaution in case Maleficent does attain full powers of darkness. But the stars are already winking out, and we can't do anything to save them unless we stop the cause. Donald!" The duck saluted. "Your Majesty," he quacked. "Set a course for Disney Castle," Mickey ordered. "We can get a better signal to the Highwind from there, and I want to see my wife before we try this." Donald ran off to the bridge, and Mickey turned to Goofy. "When we arrive," Mickey said, I want you to gather the knights. We're going to assault the castle that never was, with everything we have. We'll also need to put a call out to the Radiant Garden and Twilight Town, and any other world we know with decent fighters. The power of the Keyblade is great," he said quietly as he turned to look out into space, "but I fear it won't be enough to win this battle. Maleficent is an enemy of all the worlds, and it's going to take us all to stop her." Donald re-entered from the bridge and came to attention floating. "We'll be at Disney Castle tomorrow night if we give everything we have to the engines," he reported. Mickey nodded. "See to it, Donald," he ordered before turning his back on them. "I'll be in the training simulator if you need me." Maleficent smiled and cackled in front of the shadowy host of assembled villains that she had called and looked at the screen that faded into darkness. "So," she laughed, "the Keyblade Master and the last princess are in love. This is even more intriguing and delightful." "Excellent," a woman's voice said. "Then she'll be completely crushed when we turn him into a Heartless." "What of his nobody?" an entity of enormous power asked. "Will he emerge to fight when Sora has become a Heartless again?" "That boy or access does not matter," a high-pitched voice countered. "With Sora to the picture, he's only half as strong as either of them when together." "I tell ya," the voice of Hades added, "when the Keyblade is out of the way, I'll finally be able to get rid of Wonder Boy and that old goat." Hades then looked around at the shadowy figures present. "You know, babe," he added, inclining his head towards Maleficent, "I remember in the old days when there used to be about 6 of us at these meetings you held. Now was it you, him, her, a disembodied voice, and me? I think you're losing your touch." Maleficent turned to a longtime ally enraged. "Silence, fool!" she shouted. Hades backed away silently as the crow that sat on Maleficent's shoulder cawed at him. "They were all useless fools. Sora was able to dispatch each of them but you 3, she said, looking at the other people in the room. "You are the pinnacle of evil. As soon as we open Kingdom Hearts and command the massive army inside of it, as well as the forces I already have, I shall join you, my friends, and together we will conquer not only your worlds, but all of them." "My world is already mine," the woman said. "The only thing I have to worry about is a prophecy. And my world will soon fall to my power as soon as I'm controlling those experiments," the high voice said before the entity spoke up. "Mine almost fell to my own master's power before, at my own power," it said, a note of sheer anger in its voice. "But hope always came. Now, with your help, Maleficent, we will crush that hope." Maleficent smiled and began cackling. From the other side of the door, PJ crept away. Sora, Kairi, and Max beamed off the Highwind in front of the gates of Agrabah. They only needed to look around for a brief moment to identify one thing. The place was busy. Lines of camels, elephants were going in through the gate as they passed by the lone guard. Kairi and Max looked at him inquiringly, and Sora shrugged before walking up to the guard. "What's all the commotion?" he asked, looking at some of the people filing in with the animals. The guard turned his nose up at Sora. "A princess is to wed," he said, "to a lowly street rat." A puff of blue and purple smoke suddenly appeared in front of the guard, and a blue figure from within. "Not a street rat, man!" Genie cried as he slapped the guard on the back forcefully enough to send him to the ground. "Try Aladdin!" Genie flew up into the air and started writing the word Aladdin in the smoke from his tail. Sora looked up in joy at seeing his big blue friend again, a wide grin going from ear to ear. "Genie!" he yelled. Genie looked around to see a tiny Sora waving at him, and an instant later, Genie had appeared in front of him and enveloped Sora in a bone-crushing hug. "Sora!" he cried in jubilation, his eyes closed in happiness. "You made it in time for Al's wedding!" "Genie!" Sora struggled to get out. Genie hugged him tighter and placed his cheek against Sora's spiky hair. "What is it, buddy?" he asked. "You're kind of crushing me," Sora finally managed to say. Genie's eyes opened. "Oh," he said, releasing the boy. Sora gasped for air as his feet touched the ground again, and Carrie giggled in the background as she approached him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Sora stopped gasping and looked at her smiling face. Genie looked at Carrie for a moment before looking down at the male teen again. "Sora!" Genie cried, patting his back. "You brought a date for the wedding!" Suddenly his head shot up again in shock. "Oh, I completely forgot to ask you." He puffed away and appeared before the three of them again in a waiter's tuxedo and a thin French mustache on his face. In his hands rested a pad of paper and a pencil. "Chicken or sea bass?" Sora looked up and couldn't suppress a grin. "I'll take the sea bass," he said before looking at Kyrie. "What will you have?" She placed her finger out to her lip for a second before nodding. "The fish sounds good," she ordered. "I'll have that." She turned her head to look at Max, who was standing behind them with an anxious look on his face. "Max? First," he said slowly, "I'll be the black sheep and take the chicken. Second, don't we need invitations to go to a wedding?" Genie wrote down their orders before slapping his head. "What are you asking for invitations, dude?" he asked, wagging his head in front of Max. "If it wasn't for you, Dal, and Sora, a wedding wouldn't even be—" He stopped and looked at Max. "You aren't goofy, are you?" The trio shared a laugh before Max spoke up again. "I'm his son, Max," he said, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Genie." Genie shook it vigorously. "Family relation to Goofy," he said. "You still don't need an invitation." He turned his head to Kyrie, "Sora's girlfriend and a fellow princess of art. You don't need an invitation either. And don't even bother asking where yours is, Sora." Sora chuckled and crossed his arms. "Okay, here's a different question. Where's Aladdin?" Genie stopped and hovered in midair for a second. An instant later, they had all been poofed into Aladdin's place among the rooftops. Aladdin was crouched over a wooden box with a boo on his shoulders. "Hello!" Genie yelled as he instantly grew to an enormous size. "Somebody's gonna be late for his own wedding." Al looked up from the box. "Hang on, Genie," he said, not quite noticing Sora or the others, before looking down at the box again. "There's something I need." Genie winked at him. "I got ya," he said. He poofed again, and a large cake and carpet suddenly appeared as the party hats poofed over everyone's head, and a mug of beer was in one of Carpet's hands, and a boo's tail. A very feminine Genie suddenly popped out of the cake, and Kyrie slapped a hand over Sora's eyes. "It's a bachelor party, big boy," he said. Carpet placed a tassel into the foam on his drink, and Genie snatched it away from him. "None for you. You're the designated flyer." "No, Genie," Hal said, placing a tender finger on the box. "This is for the wedding." He opened it, but it was Sora couldn't tell. "That's a," Genie anxiously noted, "a nice dagger. It's sharp." "Kyrie," Sora moaned through the blackness, "could you get your hand off my eyes?" Kyrie moved her hand, and Sora saw Aladdin holding an ornate dagger turned to him. "Sora," Aladdin said, looking at him, "you've got a new wardrobe again." Sora looked down at himself, remembering his new outfit, before looking back at Al and smirking. Aladdin shook his head. "I remember the first time I saw you, Sora. You looked just like a kid. And then when you came back, you were starting to look the part of the hero. Now you look like the teenage hero you are. But I swear, the next time you show up, you're going to be wearing something different again." "Hey, what can I say?" he asked. "I like to change of style." Aladdin nodded before looking at Kyrie. "So, this is the famous Kyrie," he chuckled. "The same one who got punked with you this morning?" Genie slapped a hand to his head as the others looked at Aladdin in shock. "Kyrie, what are you still doing here?" Genie asked. He snapped his fingers, and he and Kyrie disappeared in a puff of smoke. They reappeared in Jasmine's chambers, where she was sitting at a desk with a large mirror on it. Jasmine was even more beautiful than Kyrie had remembered, wearing an elegant white wedding dress. Lilacs were set in her raven hair, keeping a pure white cloth in place. Genie cleared his throat and hid Kyrie behind him. Jasmine turned to him with a smile on her face. "Yes, Genie?" she asked with a giggle. Jess, he said, moving to his left a little, I have someone here to see you. Genie finished moving, and Jasmine gasped in happiness when she saw Kyrie. Kyrie! She exclaimed in jubilation, running forward and enveloping her in a hug. Kyrie smiled and hugged her fellow princess before looking at her. So you're getting married, Kyrie said in happiness. Jasmine nodded. Yes, we're finally getting married, but... She smirked and looked at Kyrie. We haven't slept in the same bed yet. Kyrie shook her head slowly. How do you guys know about that? She asked. Jasmine laughed. We saw the sphere cast this morning, she answered. So, would you like to be my maid of honor? Kyrie looked up and nodded vigorously. Of course, she answered gleefully. We princesses have to stay together. Jasmine smiled and turned to Genie. I'm sure phenomenal cosmic powers can whip a dress for Kyrie, he said, pushing up his arms to leave his hands floating in midair. Kyrie stood still, and Genie unleashed the magic upon her. Kyrie was suddenly garbed in a white dress. A golden hat with a yellow tail spreading from the hat covered up her red hair, and gold fabric was intertwined with the white in several pieces. Jasmine removed the hat from Kyrie's brow to reveal her auburn locks again as Genie vanished. You look better without the hat, Jasmine explained as Kyrie smiled. Genie came back and Aladdin turned away from them and sighed. Jasmine was with Kyrie, smiles glowing on their faces. Sora smiled at all the happy faces, but most especially at Aladdin's, who had the most ecstatic of all. Don't worry, Al, Sora said. You're going to be a great father. Aladdin nodded but remained silent, and Sora took the opportunity to look around. Bright banners of all colors hung throughout the hall. Streamers were stretched as far as they could be stretched, and flowers of multiple hues and soft fragrances adorned the walls and stairwells. Aladdin and his two groomsmen waited at the base of the stairs to the altar, and Genie suddenly showed up holding a white lily and a pastry. Bad news, Al, he said. The boudoirs clashed with the cummerbunds. He didn't notice, though, that he was holding the wrong objects. Genie, Max whispered, don't you think it's a little late for that? Genie rounded on the three of them. What? What are you trying to say? Out with it! He suddenly noticed the crowd gathered. Oh, they're here. Sora laughed aloud as Genie transformed himself into the White Rabbit from Wonderland and started running down the red carpet. The doors swung open to let him pass. As they swung back, Genie had become a trumpeter in a formal dress similar to Aladdin. He let wind his instruments in 3 ringing blasts. Genie then vanished, and 3 flower girls in lilac dresses started walking down the aisle, spreading their flower petals behind them as a small boy with a banner followed. The Sultan was then brought in on his leader, and carpet clapped while Abu cheered him on. The guards brought the leader down, and the Sultan walked up to Aladdin, Sora, and Max as they bowed before him. He elbowed at Aladdin and chuckled. Don't look so solemn, boy, he said. This is a happy day. Genie used his magic and white doves appeared, holding up a white carpet with golden edging. They flew forward, cooing softly, and dropped it at the Sultan's feet. Trumpets sounded, and all turned to see 2 blue peacocks slowly retracting their tails. Jasmine stood before them all, holding a bouquet of white lilies, and behind her, to Jasmine's left, was Kyrie. She was more beautiful in Sora's eyes than she had ever been before, and he stood smiling at her as they walked up the carpet slowly. Wow, Aladdin said, and Sora nodded, his eyes only for Kyrie. She looked at him and smiled with twinkling eyes as she walked behind Jasmine. Everything turned to a soft pink in Sora's eyes, except for Kyrie's face. He smiled contentedly. Finally, they arrived at the stairway to the altar, and Jasmine exchanged a few words with her father before taking Aladdin's hand and ascending. Sora took Kyrie's hand, and she giggled slightly, and their cheeks turned a soft pink before they ascended, after Aladdin and Jasmine, and stood behind them. The priest came out of the flowers behind the altar and began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, he said with a smile, we are gathered here today to witness the union between these 2 good people, Princess Jasmine and Aladdin, in the joyful bond of holy matrimony. The 2 looked at each other and smiled before the priest continued. If anyone has any objection to this wedding, speak now, or forever hold their peace. Sora and Kyrie tightened their lips, but a voice spoke up from behind. I do. They wheeled around in anger at who would dare interrupt a wedding to see Pete and someone who chilled the very marrow of Sora's bones. Cossacks. Uh-oh, Roxas said in Sora's mind as the fear overcame him as well. You fiends! The Sultan roared. How dare you come here and try to steal my daughter again? Again? Max asked, bewildered. Aladdin moved to stand protectively in front of Jasmine. She already tried to take her away once, Aladdin snapped, drawing a scimitar that Genie had just created and pointing at Kosek. Nobody smiled and stepped forward, a malicious grin on her face. "We're taking Jasmine away," she said as silver axes with crimson hafts appeared in her hands. "And you won't stop us this time. Mind Crush!" "No!" Carrie cried, just as Sora and all other except for her and Jasmine dropped to their knees in agony. Carrie raised her hand and a shielding bubble of light surrounded the wedding party. Sora's complexion softened up as he stood up, completely healed and protected. "I love you," he whispered, kissing Carrie on the cheek. She smiled at him as Aladdin and the others stood up. "I know," she replied. The Oathkeeper appeared in her hands as she spoke. "If I'm going to be doomed to keep fighting these guys in a dress," she said, "I can at least fight well." A bead of sweat started to form on her brow, and Sora looked at it inquiringly. Pete burst through the lights, and Max and Aladdin started to fight him. But Sora and Kyrie took no notice. "Kyrie," he asked, placing a hand on her forehead, "what's wrong?" She grimaced at him and looked out at the light bubble. "I can't keep the shield up much longer," she said. "Using light drains me more than using regular magic." She shook her head just as Pete barreled towards them. Sora and Kyrie leapt back out of his wake, and Max came up and tossed a silver charm at Sora. Sora grabbed it and looked at it for a second before resolve filled his face. "Kyrie," he ordered, "drop it now!" She nodded and the light fizzled away. Sora saw Kosek's smirking face before he tossed the charm into the air. White Fang! A rolling mist filled the minds of everyone present. The mist was rolling through a pine forest in the dead of night. Light from the full moon filtered through it, revealing the ground. The soft round paws crunching on snow could be heard through the mist. A black figure of a wolf started to form as the sound increased in volume. The figure broke through the mist and ran up a cliff overlooking the forest. White Fang howled at the moon set before him, shining down on him and his forest. White Fang suddenly burst into existence in the chamber next to Sora, and the two of them sprinted forward at Kosek. She raised her axes to greet them, and White Fang barked loudly as Sora roared in anger, the Oblivion appearing in Sora's hands, and he swung it in a circular arc as White Fang bit Kosek in the back. She cried in pain, and Sora knocked her axes out of her hands. The Oblivion swung around constantly in a blinding flurry against Kosek's front, and White Fang kept her pinned in place by ripping at her with his claws. White Fang suddenly howled loudly, and Sora pointed the Oblivion in the air. An image of the full moon appeared, and its light shone down into the wedding hall as bright light of the sun dimmed. Rolling mists filled the floor, and White Fang howled again. The mists wrapped themselves around the Oblivion, and the blade turned silver for a moment. With a mighty roar, Sora pointed his keyblade at Kosek. A power-filled silver energy, its front forming in the shape of a wolf's head and the front body, came out and headed straight for the nobody. Kosek threw herself to the side, just in time to avoid it. White Fang nodded his head at Sora before vanishing, and Kosek fabricated a portal of darkness. "Pete!" she yelled. "Get in here, you oaf!" Pete ran away from where Max and Aladdin had been fighting him with Genie's help and ran through the portal. Kosek turned away from Pete's retreating figure and glared at Sora. She brought her arms above her head, and there was a large cracking sound. Sora looked up to see the roof starting to collapse, and instantly brought his hands up. A Raflaga shield formed around everyone, and the roof's stonework crashed upon it, a cracking and breaking further as they impacted on the shell. Dust settled as every last piece slid off the shell, and Sora sighed before crying in agony and grabbing his leg. Kosek withdrew into the portal, one of her axes shining with red blood. The portal closed, and everyone ran up to Sora in anxiety. Carrie knelt next to him and looked at the ripped white fabric of the robes he had been in. They were stained in blood. From a deep gash Kosek had struck to his calf. Green tendrils came from her fingers and embedded themselves in the wound. The glow persisted for a moment before fading, and Carrie's head fell onto Sora's shoulders, asleep. Sora smiled softly and kissed her forehead. "Did you two really sleep in the same bed, Sora?" Genie asked as Sora laid Carrie down and attempted to stand. He chuckled weakly and plopped back on the broken stairs in a sitting position. "Is everyone going to know about that?" he asked lightheartedly before looking around at the devastation and dismay. He turned his head to look up at Aladdin. "I'm sorry about your wedding," he apologized. Aladdin waved his hand tiredly. "No need to apologize, Sora," he said. "I'm just sad that she tried to take Jasmine away." "When did she come here last time?" Max asked. "On the 26th of August," Jasmine answered. "We were inspecting the pavilion and started ordering flowers when she showed up alone. Her mind powers made Aladdin fall weak, but my heart's light protected him." Sora nodded before looking at his sleeping angel. "The 26th," he breathed, placing a hand on her cheek. "The same day we admitted we loved one another." Max looked uncomfortably at Sora, who was conjuring a white bandage to wrap around his currently useless leg. Before glancing at where the portal had been, "I should tell him Riku's message," he thought. "I'll tell him now." Max opened his mouth to speak when suddenly Iago flew in from the entrance hall, where all the gifts had been, and landed on Carrie's knee. Max was about to speak when Iago sighed. "Look, Sora," he said, "it might be best if you guys leave. If that woman shows up again, I don't know what's going to happen to you if Kyrie's still asleep." Sora smiled and rubbed his fingers through Iago's feathered head. "Ah, Iago," he said warmly, "you do care." In Sora's hands, a small circular biscuit appeared. "Iago wanna..." He joked, bringing the cracker towards the parrot's beak. Iago's complexion changed from compassion and worry to downright anger. "Say cracker and I'll bite your finger off," he snapped. Sora and the others laughed as Iago started ranting and raving. And that was chapter 21, Ashton and Aladdin. If you like this story and you like me reading it and you want to be a part of this, feel free to message me on Twitter or add me on Skype at AnimeGuy1 on Twitter, AnimeGuyKurosaki1 on Skype. And, well, that was chapter 21. Next time is chapter 22, A Hitch. See you next time, and may the grace of the Val protect you. Bye.